Alright, back out of the Hutchinson house for the first watering and the second leaves. Didn't film the first leaves because, well, the second leaves showed up by the time the first leaves opened. But that's how it is. Also, once again, apologies for the wind noise. It's always windy here when I'm filming. But not when I'm working. So as you can see, I have just watered the cotton for the first time. These two rows, 1 and 2, are the only ones that are going to be irrigated. It works out perfectly that 2-gallon watering can, well, like 1 3/4 gallon watering can, is just enough to water each row sufficiently for a day. So I don't know if I'm going to water these once a day or once every other day. With how little water that thing puts out and how much erosion that water is causing, I'll probably just water them that much a day. So as you can see, stuck down in there. So far we're at about just over 80% germination, which I think is fantastic. I just finished finally weeding all of row 1 and then coarsely weeding all of row 2. As you can sort of make out, the fertilizer is making a heck of a difference on the cotton's vegetative growth. It's also making a heck of a difference on the weed's vegetative growth. This nutgrass is becoming the bane of my existence. I think in the future we're going to have to go with plastic. There's just no other way. Also, I think I made these beds a little too tall. So here's what the average space in row 1 looks like. This is an unfertilized and, in the future, irrigated row. This is not quite the control. And over here, this is what one of the rows in row 2, which is an irrigated and fertilized row. And as you can see, these plants are just a lot taller. As you can see, the cotton in this fertilized row is a lot taller, and that actually might be a bad thing. Too much vegetative growth too quickly at this stage can result in really tall, spindly seedlings, which in this wind that you're undoubtedly hearing right now is not a good thing. This will cause the stems to snap and kill the cotton. The deer fence does help a little bit with that. It breaks up the wind, sort of cushions the cotton against it. Doesn't stop the wind, but it just sort of slows it down a bit. But I think I have one cotton around here that has a second leaf already. And that's on row 2. The only cotton I've seen with second leaves, I think, has been on the centered rows. I think I'm mistaken, but certainly the cotton in the fertilized rows is much taller than the cotton in the unfertilized row. But once again, that may not be a good thing. That may result in higher seedling mortality, which, doesn't matter how fast they grow and how early they start fruiting if they die before they get a chance to. Okay, so it's the next day, and I have finished weeding and hilling all of the cotton seedlings in row 3 and 4. And I've noticed something interesting. I thought these fertilized rows, 2 and 3, were going to take substantially longer to weed than the unfertilized rows, but it seems that the opposite is the case, and I think I figured out why. Over here on the unfertilized row, the plants can't grow as fast. They don't have as much access to nutrients. So they have to sort of stay squat and develop their root system in order to really find all the nutrients they need to grow. Whereas over here on the fertilized row, they have ready access to all of the necessary macronutrients. So they can grow a lot quicker, and they put a lot more effort into vegetative growth. And there shouldn't be any more weeds over here than over here because they're growing in the same dirt, and the fertilizer has no bearing on germination or turion or tuber sprouting. So there should be the same number of weeds per row. However, over here on the fertilized row, the weeds are able to grow much taller, much faster, and they're much less tough, and they have a much smaller root system. It also means that these larger plants start competing for resources a lot faster, which means that some of the weeds die out before they ever get a chance to establish. So it ends up being that there's less weeds here on the fertilized row than over here on the unfertilized row, because these have already totally blanketed out some of them, and the ones that are here are larger and they're less well developed so they're easier to remove, which is totally counter to what I was expecting, which is also a good thing. It also, as I said before, it appears that the cotton here and the fertilized rows, those macronutrients are really helping their growth because they're just much taller than these over here. See, this is about as mature as they come, but it's, only this big. Whereas over here, this is similarly mature, and it is much taller. It's about twice the height. But as I said before, that may be a bad thing, because if these get too tall too fast without strengthening their stems, they may be snapped off in the wind. So we shall see. But I also wanted to show you guys some irrigation on rows 1 and 2 while I'm here today. However, I can't work a pitcher pump while holding a watering can while filming, and this is a phone and not a GoPro. So I will see you when I have a full watering can. Alright, I've got my watering can filled up, and I believe this watering can holds it's between 1.5 and like 1 3/4 gallons. It's not quite 2 gallons. I know for a fact that this cat litter container here that I'm using as my pitcher pup priming reservoir, that's pretty technical, holds about 2 1/4 to 2 1/2, and this is, about 3/4 the size. So don't ask me why I know that. It involves kerosene and gun barrels. But anyway, I'm estimating that this watering can holds between 1.5 and 1 3/4 gallons. And that is just enough to water one of these rows, as long as I don't dilly-dally. So I just give each one about 5 passes. I think I'm going a little quick here, but you get the gist. I'll go. That's about all I'm doing. I'll go back over one more time because I did that rather quick. I should have. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. Like that. And just do that one more time. We rigged up a little system to hold this while I pump. Hopefully it'll work. Probably won't, but we'll pump and talk. I was at Old Sheldon Church Ruins in Yemassee the other day, and they had an antique pitcher pump out there on a shallow water well, and it interestingly had a spout that came out like this and down, and it had a third leather at the end of the spout. So it was technically a self-priming pitcher pump that never ran dry, and I thought that was really neat. And that'd be very nice to have out here. However, I'm not going to try and source one of those things. But it was nice, because this thing runs dry if you don't use it within like 15 minutes after priming it. And now the struggle is going to be getting this thing off without spilling water everywhere. That actually ended up being easier to get off than I expected. Now I've got this in my right hand, so hopefully I'll be able to water this a little bit better. Probably not, but we'll see. And this is the fertilized row that I weeded much more coarsely than row 1. This is row 2 I'm watering. I weeded rows 3 and 4 not quite as finely as row 1, but much finer than row 2. So we'll see if that makes a difference in how often I have to weed. And I outran it just a little bit. So we'll go right back over again. We'll see how much of an impact irrigation has on weed control as well. I'm really bad about keeping that in the frame. Oh yeah, and here is this mystery cotton plant that came up 12 inches to the right of where it's supposed to be, and I don't know where it's there. I don't remember if I found a stray seed lying around. I just randomly planted it. I feel like I recorded that, and that's on video somewhere, but I need to go back and check that. And this, me saying this right now is a reminder for me to do that. You will see right here if that was actually the case. In which case, that would technically be 2,4E, which would be nice to know for my data. But yeah, everything's been weeded and hilled, and I don't know if I explained yesterday, but hilling just protects the young stems from being broken by the wind, and that's important until they start to produce some lateral growth and make their stems nice and woody. And you need to hill them just to keep the stems from doing this and then snapping in half. I already had one where the crown twisted and broke, so hopefully that will help. It's definitely going to be necessary for these central rows with how fast these plants are growing from fertilizers. I mean, just look at these suckers. Look at that thing. It does not look like a 2-week-old plant. That looks like a 2-week-old plant. Yeah, so the next time you'll probably see these plants is when they're doing something interesting. I guess the first square or first auxiliary branch I see. First fertile branch. I don't know what terminology is. I'll refresh myself before then. But either that or if I have something crazy happen, like a deer jumps the fence and does donuts in here and tears everything up. But until then, I will be tiding you over either with some riveting data analysis as well as updates on my cotton gin. I am working on my second prototype as it stands. I'm waiting on some Chinese gears to show up in my mailbox. So until then, Tom out.